Hello and good morning. Thank you for joining in here. So this session is going to be a quick debrief of how privileged access security controls can help you not only adhere to the NIS2, which has been affected into force very recently, but also I'll touch upon the basics of zero trust and how privileged access management controls can help complement your zero trust strategy. Okay, so don't be confused with the big championing words here. This is going to be a merely a very basic session on how you can plug privileged access controls into your employee onboarding, contractual employee onboarding and offboarding processes in place, right? I'm Srilekha. I'm a product consultant for privileged access management and identity security solutions at ManageEngine. So let me begin with a statement here, right? So anybody here is aware of standing privileges? Are you guys aware of what standing privileges mean and what organizations will have to do with standing privileges? Anybody? So Gartner says, according to Gartner, standing privilege is a state of an organization, especially your IT, where you don't have any unmanaged privileges in place, right? It could be a simple password that is left unmanaged, up to your developer secrets, your service accounts, your administrator accounts, and so on. So it is ideally a state where you need to have nil standing privileges, so as to protect your organizational assets from privilege misuse, insider threats, and so on, right? So as much as privileges are a boon to your organization, especially for administrative users, where it can give access to sensitive resources exclusively to certain types of users, it could also be a bane for your organization at large if they are not managed properly, right? So this is where we are getting at. As we speak, there's a news about privilege misuse just a couple of weeks ago. So there used to be an employee working in a federal organization in the US who tried to extort money from the organizer, their ex-employer, which is also a federal organization, by shutting down their servers. So when you think about it, all they had was a simple access to a password that was not managed effectively. So this is why you need to have password security and access security as part of your IT identity and access management strategy, especially if it concerns privileged users, right? So looking at the data breach stats today, we have 38% of overall cyber attacks concerning only lost and unmanaged credentials, right? Of which 68% of cyber attacks involve a human element, some form of human element, which could be either human error or malice or just plain ignorance, right? Negligence. And the mean time to identify that one of your identities, which is usually your passwords, if they have been compromised, it takes an organization about 290 odd days to identify that it is only because of a credential leak. So for about 200 days, organizations don't even know that they've been breached because of a password, right? So that's how sensitive it is. Now, we at ManageEngine ran an identity security survey to identify what kind of identity posture do organizations have today, right? So we had some really interesting projections here where the perception of C-suite was entirely different from that of the people who actually practice cybersecurity in reality, right? So 73 to 79% of cybersecurity decision makers believe that their current identity security stack was very capable of handling all types of identity related attacks, whereas only 59% of the actual security practitioners believe that their C-suite was right. Again, 84 to 91% of industries, the decision makers pertaining to different industries like healthcare, automotive, aerospace, all of these 84 to 91% of C-suite people think that identity security is very, very important to their security strategy, whereas only 68% of the SecOps people feel that they have enough tools to prevent identity-related attacks. So the stark reality here is, while the C-suite people believe that they have all the security and strategy and tools in place, the actual practitioners believe that they don't have enough in place, right? So when it comes to zero trust security, over 80% of the C-suite believes that they have zero trust strategy in motion, right, in their organization. However, only 30 to 35% of the same decision makers feel that their organizations is anywhere closer to the zero standing privilege state, which means they have privileges which are not managed, which can be easily exploited either by human error or negligence or plain, malice, right? So this is why you need to have privileged access management as part of your zero trust strategy as well. I'll tell you, I'll get to that part in a minute, but here are some more interesting stats as well. Close to 73% of respondents in the survey also believe that they have zero trust focused identity security strategy in place. This is down to a number of reasons, because they have either lack of processes, knowledge, or strategy in place. Some people also believe that there is also a lot of identities, lots of types of identities today, not just passwords, not just accounts, but there are also other types of identities that they're not able to manage in the current state. And some of them also trust their employees inherently, which means if someone needs access to a sensitive server, they just share the credentials without even knowing the intention of the employee or knowing the identity posture of the employee, right? And 32% of these decision makers also feel that there could be a productivity loss if you add more tools to your identity stack. So this is why only 73% of CIOs believe that they have identity security focused on zero trust, right? And when you delve into this more, identity security as such is a very siloed process today. So you have IAM, you have PAM, you have CIM, but these are very loose-ended today. So they're not tightly knit. And this is why 44% of decision makers believe that they'll have to rely on more than one vendor, more than 4 vendors for their simple identity needs. So you might have a vendor for IGA, you might have a vendor for CIM, you might have a vendor for SIM. So, but many of these CIOs also believe that they need to have a single vendor strategy for their identity security stack, right? Which brings me to the point, you might have basic password hygiene is in place, right? You might have a vault where you secure your passwords, you might have secure sharing mechanisms, you might have periodic password resets, and you might also have auditing and reporting capabilities, but there is still something lacking in your overall identity security and credential security strategy, because it is not a one-time process, right? It is an ongoing process. You need to have something more than just password management as part of your identity security strategy, which is why privileged access management is going to help you. So privileged access management is a holistic form of security where you have credential management, not just credential management, but you also have security for all types of identities. So when I say all types of identities, it's not just your passwords and administrative accounts. It also includes your service accounts. It also includes your developer secrets. It also includes your IoT secrets, your SSL certificates, your SSH keys, and so on. So this is why you need to have privileged access management as one layer above your identity layer, right? You might have your IAM tool, your IGA tool. It is what privilege deals with. So speaking of your identity security stack, like I said, you need to have access management. You need to also have IGA, but your PAM strategy should also be a part of your identity stack. So when it comes to identity threat detection and response, your prevention layer should have both PAM and IAM. Your response layer should have your endpoint security, your CM, your SOAR, your CASB. It needs to have data leak prevention and so on. So this is what your identity stack should ideally look like. It should have both preventive and reactive controls. So before we begin on understanding how your organization or how you can approach privileged access management from a zero trust point of view, let me get back to the basics where we speak about the basic principles of zero trust, which is always verify, assume breach, and least privilege access. So how many of you here have least privileged access as part of your employee onboarding and offboarding processes? It's good. That's great. That's a good number. So off late, when I speak to prospects, off late, when I speak to customers, oftentimes they've always told me that onboarding and offboarding are two areas where they lack privileged access management controls, especially preventive controls. So my use cases here today will speak about how and what kind of privileged access management controls you can include as part of your employee journey, which includes both onboarding and offboarding, right? So let's take the first scenario where you have a disgruntled employee. We all have such employees in our organization. Let's say John is an employee who has been working for an organization for a while, and he has access to all the basic password controls. And in John's organization, let's assume that all the employees have access to all kinds of passwords and resources, right? But John is an unhappy employee, which means they're upset with their manager because of whatever reason, and they try to turn rogue. So what happens here is when John quits the organization, they're going to copy all the passwords with them. They're going to carry all the privileges that they had access to because their organization does not have a secure offboarding process in place, right? So when you have unhappy employees in your organization, you need to assume that you can't trust them inherently, which means zero trust, right? So when employees like John quit, you need to make sure that they had just about enough access to resources in the first place. Let's say John accesses servers and machines on a day-to-day basis. You need to ensure that you need to give only privileges that they will need to carry out their jobs, right? So this includes a multi-pronged strategy where John is first given access to resources as and when it is needed, not all times, right? And when John needs access, their access privileges can be elevated. And after their access period ends, you'll have to ensure that all the accesses are revoked. And when you grant access to John, you need to also ensure that their access posture needs to be studied, and after which accesses can be granted, right? With this, they will not have access that are more than necessary for their role, and that will give them leeway to carry passwords and do whatever they want after quitting the organization. Now let's look at how traditionally employee offboarding is done. When you have a HR tool in place, the HR invokes an offboarding request, after which the IT team ensures that the user account is deprovisioned, all their assets are confiscated by the IT team, and the employee is actually let go of the organization, right? So this is how a typical offboarding looks like. But we'll add one more layer to this process where when a user quits the organization, when an employee quits this organization, we need to revoke all the access to sensitive passwords that they had once access to, right? So this includes all the passwords of servers that they had access to. You might have employees who share passwords on Slack, right? They'll share passwords on Teams and Slack. So you need to ensure that all these accesses are only provisioned using a PAM, right? You have developers who don't, have their own APIs or auth tokens, right? They'll have shared auth tokens and they'll have shared keys. So in such cases, you need to ensure that all these secrets are also managed on a PAM tool so that they will not be able to copy these secrets when they quit this organization. So that way you do a privilege cleanup, you do an audit of what kind of resources that they once had access to, and you ensure that these access privileges are purged before an organization lets go of its employees, right? So this way you're ensuring that there is no standing privileges in your environment where there is no passwords that can be misused or even by chance shared with other users. 2, these passwords and credentials also have newer administrators to manage right now, right? And 3, you're ensuring that these these employees, ex-employees, don't turn rogue when they quit the organization. So this is one thing that we discuss with our prospects on a very recent basis, very often basis, right? So this is something that I wanted to share. So when it comes to human element, error is one of the common ways with which a privilege creep can happen, right? When your credentials can be leaked through some kind of error. So let's understand this process where Daniel, we have an employee called Daniel who is a Linux administrator who does some routine work every day, which includes running some sensitive commands. So one day, Daniel flushes all the firewall's rules by typing in the wrong command. So this happens often to a lot of people. This is just a human error. But this could have powerful ramifications if it is not routed through a PAM tool or if there is no credential security in place, right? So this can be handled by least privileged access. So when you have employees like Daniel who are prone to making mistakes, just like us, you need to ensure that their commands, the commands that they run on a daily basis are strictly restricted. So when you have a PAM tool deployed in place, it can ensure that users like Daniel can only run certain commands and they can't run sensitive commands. You will have application and command controls in place, and once Daniel is done with his job, all the access privileges are revoked. So this way, you give users just about enough and minimal access privileges for them to carry out their job, right? So this way, you don't ensure that your credentials are leaked. This way, you don't ensure that you also ensure that your business processes are not disrupted because of some small error, minor error. So how can PAM tool help you, right? So when you go for a traditional, when you go for the conventional approach, when a user accesses, when a user wanted to access a sensitive server, you check for their ID, you see their role, you grant access, right? So when you have a PAM tool in place, this takes a notch higher approach, right? The approach is a little different. When a user requests access, the access should be analyzed automatically. So is Daniel a legitimate user? Is Daniel's request valid? Is Daniel going to, spill out credentials? No way. I'm going to, restrict the number of commands that they have access to. So this way, PAM tools can actually analyze the security posture of both the users and the resources that they have access to, and then grant accesses based on the merits of the request and the user, right? So this way you ensure that you only give minimal access to this user without letting them leak the credentials by some form of error, right? My last and final use case, we all have developers in our organization, right? How many of you work with developers and their secrets? How many of you manage container environments, Docker, right? Okay. So you have developers who share their auth credentials, the tokens, API keys through chat. Does that happen often? Or do you route them using a PAM tool or a credential management tool? So this is one of the very interesting use cases that a prospect brought to us. We did not have, so the prospect did not have insight into what their developers are doing. So one of the prospects told us that their developer was pressurized to launch a hot fix in a span of 2 hours. And this developer was so pressurized, they hosted the application build on the production server, but they forgot to remove the API keys from the server. So the keys were already in the server, and they realized that somebody had tried to log into their infrastructure, their Azure infrastructure, much later. I'm saying 6-7 weeks later. And there was some repeated login attempts to their Azure environment, which they did not have any cognizance of. And then when they ran a survey, it was revealed that the infrastructure keys and the API keys were left in the production server without the developer cleaning up all the keys that they left there. So here as well, you have developers who work on short notices, pressure, which might lead to, errors and, like this. So in such cases, you need to ensure that you include DevOps secret security as part of your PAM strategy as well, right? So how it works is when you have environments like Kubernetes, Ansible, Puppet, which require continuous authentication because, these are like CI/CD pipelines. So there will be continuous integration and continuous deployments, right? So when you have such processes in place, every time somebody needs access to the keys, they need to be first, authenticated. And these keys that they use to run their deployments in time should also be a part of the PAM repository. So this way, your developers don't share the secrets with them. Rather, they'll only fetch the secrets from a secure repository. This way, you don't copy secrets. This way, you don't leave secrets unmanaged. And this way, you don't leak the secrets as well, right? So this is why PAM, privileged access management, should also be a part of your DevOps routines. So I have, shared some 3 major use cases that were part of the RFPs and tenders that we fill as part of our government, projects and stuff like that. So if you have any interesting use cases, privileged access use cases that you might have come across, I'll be happy to take it up as well, right? So to summarize everything that I've said now, you need to start looking at zero standing privileges as one of your security goals, right? And in order to implement zero standing privileges in your environment, you need to start here, where you need to conduct a thorough audit of your environment. You need to see if you have any stale accounts, if you have any disabled accounts, if you have any orphaned accounts. So you need to ensure that the accounts are cleaned up and new are also assigned to these accounts. 2, you need to assign least privileges whenever there is an access request, to sensitive servers and DMZ resources. You need to ensure that these users only have minimal and enough access to gain minimal access privilege to those resources, right? That way you don't spill credentials. That way these users also don't misuse their credentials, right? And you need to also implement just-in-time privilege elevation. This is a privileged access management only control where you give elevated access to users for a stipulated period. You don't give permanent elevated access to those users. This way, they don't end up misusing their privileges, right? And you should also ensure that once their access period ends, their credentials are cleaned up. Again, there is no privilege creep in their environment, right? And finally, you need to enforce MFA, which adds another layer to your sensitive passwords, which is just an additional security layer. And you need to eliminate hard coding of secrets. This is why I took up the developer examples where developers always hard code their secrets. So whenever there is a CI/CD pipeline going on, your pipelines are going to reference to a text file where credentials are stored, right? So you need to eliminate that. If Kubernetes or if Docker needs secure passwords or secrets, you need to have a PAM tool where these secrets are stored. And you need to securely fetch these secrets using an API instead of storing them in text files, which are prone to, leak, right? So that's about it. And I am part of Manage Engine. Manage Engine has an IAM, a comprehensive IAM platform, starting from Workforce IAM to cloud native CIAM and Workforce IAM. And we also have a full stack privileged access management solution. We have all things you need to manage your IAM requirements and your identity security requirements. So if you are interested in knowing about us, what we do in terms of the IAM platform and identity security and other cybersecurity solutions, please visit our booth and we'll be happy to take you through any use case that you might have, right? And with NIS2 in place, we'll be happy to take you through how our privileged access controls can help you, adhere to the NIS2 controls. You can download a free copy of our ebook here. You should also be having the books with you. So if you don't happen to have one, you can download it from our website as well. So thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful learning experience here and networking experience as well. So see you around. Thank you.